Part 67. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 685. Zhu Huntang pulled the hem of her skirt and felt that her socks were loose. Maybe it was because of a guilty conscience, and she was worried that Lu Chang'an would do whatever he wanted with her socks in the next moment. Zhu Huntang believed that sending pictures of beautiful girls to Lu Chang'an was not a provocation to him at all, so there was no need for him to feel guilty. It was just a matter of pushing Bai Hui's emotional line. When she turned around, she found that Lu Chang'an had walked in and was staring at her with an indescribable expression. Why are you looking at me?" In order to show that he was not afraid of Lu Chang'an at all, Zhu Huntang spoke with his head held high, but he still took 2 steps back for the sake of security. "Since the birth of human beings, you are the most special. No wonder I feel like a fairy," Lu Chang'an said with a sigh. "Of course, I am a unique fairy." Zhu Huntang was proud. Lu Chang'an finally recognized her as a fairy. Although he felt a little reluctant, the meaning of his words was that he admitted that she was completely different from ordinary girls. Lu Chang'an turned around and said to Bai Hui, "Have you seen Guan Yuan recently?" Bai Hui didn't know why Lu Chang'an suddenly asked Guan Yuan, shook his head and said, "No, he asked for leave. He told the teacher that his ancestors went to Brazil during the Opium War, and are now reclaiming the Amazon rainforest, which is the largest in the world. A manufacturer of disposable chopsticks, he is going to inherit his grandfather's shares in the Brazilian railway." Has he taken leave? Lu Chang'an didn't know what to say. This was too casual. Yeah, Bai Hui showed a look of envy. "I also want to inherit the inheritance, and I also want to go to Brazil." "You don't think there's anything wrong?" Lu Chang'an looked at the girl in front of him and her little head. "It's not her fault. People don't put nutrients into their brains. It's normal for their brains to not work well. It feels a bit fake. This life is so good." Bai Hui continued to express his envy, and then chuckled, "But let me just say that I don't really dare to travel to such a country." "I will take you there next time," Zhu Huntang said generously. "We will take a private plane. In places like Brazil, as long as you have money, it is very convenient and safe. We will bring the armed forces and will not go to places controlled by drug lords. It's very safe to go." Although Zhu Huntang lacks common sense in many aspects, it cannot be said that she has little knowledge. It is just that her knowledge often has no chance to be revealed or is too ungrounded in daily life, such as contacting and interacting with ordinary people. Okay. Bai Hui held Zhu Huntang's hand and jumped happily. Lu Chang'an thought about it and found that Guan Yuan was not mentioned in the gold coin in the morning. Guan Yuan was a randomly created modified human being, and there was really no need to deliberately take him to the Antarctic. As for Sunangxiu specifically wanting to bring Guan Yuan with her, the possibility is even lower. Guan Yuan does not have such a status in Sunangxiu's heart. It's probably because Guan Yuan betrayed Sunangxiu and became Jing Coin's subordinate. That's fine. If Guan Yuan stayed at Xiongda, Lu Chang'an would have to test him or get rid of him, which would also be a problem. "Come back with me and I'll kill that robot." Lu Chang'an came to Zhu Huntang because he had something serious to do. "There is indeed something wrong with it, right?" Zhu Huntang became excited. "Is it really a voodoo?" Bai Hui had already heard Zhu Huntang tell about the weird robot and the story of the exterminated master of the voodoo girl in western Hunan. She was also a little excited and looked at Lu Chang'an expectantly, hoping that he would explain it. "Do you know that a negative makes a positive?" Lu Chang'an did not directly answer Zhu Huntang and Bai Hui's questions, but just looked at them expressionlessly. Bai Hui didn't like his expression a little, but she immediately felt proud, because she had confessed her love after all, and she expected him to be gentler, such as saying "little fool" with a smiling expression, but now his expression was obviously the same as before, and when she acted stupidly, he directly said, "Are you an idiot?" Bai Hui snorted lightly. Couldn't this Lu Chang'an make her a little prouder, so that she could find fault with his attitude towards her? What does this have to do with Gu people? Zhu Huntang's mentality has always been very stable. She has seen Lu Chang'an's expressions, even the expression that really wanted to kill her. Even if she was scared at the time, she could quickly recover afterward. Recover. As we all know, the concept of negative numbers first appeared in China. The equations chapter gave the rules for addition and subtraction of positive and negative numbers. However, it was not until the end of the 13th century that Zhu Shiji clearly stated in Arithmetic Enlightenment that multiplication and division with the same name are clearly stated. Positive, when multiplied by different names, you get negative, but in the 18th century, there were still Western mathematicians who believed that the algorithm of getting positive from negative was a fallacy. Doesn't it feel incredible? Lu Chang'an said. What does this have to do with Gu people? Zhu Huntang said with wide eyes. She just wanted to know about Gu people. He must want to laugh at us. Bai Hui looked at Lu Chang'an suspiciously. She knew very well that every time Lu Chang'an started talking nonsense from a place billions of light years away, the final conclusion he came to was to prove you are so stupid and so on. When we measure some of the more popular data, there is a standard line. Those above the standard line are positive, and those below are negative. In terms of IQ, you two are negative. I guess you have no objection to the description of objective facts. Yes. Do you think that two people with negative IQs together can make a positive number from a negative number? Lu Chang'an looked at the two girls in summary. It's impossible. The negative number is exactly multiplication. You two are together. Addition, it's more negative. When someone confesses, even if the other party doesn't accept it, more or less, the attitude towards the person confessing will change a bit, but he will still be as bad as ever. Bai Hui bit her lip and stared at Lu Chang'an without saying a word. Then your IQ is positive. Zhu Huntang looked at Lu Chang'an very calmly, preparing to hit him back. Of course Lu Chang'an nodded. The multiplication of a negative number by a negative number is a positive number, and the multiplication of a negative number by a positive number is also a negative number, right? That means that most of the time, when you are alone with Bai Hui or with me, isn't it? A fool with a negative IQ, Zhu Huntang looked at Lu Chang'an proudly. As long as it can be proven that Lu Chang'an is a fool, what does it matter if he first admits that his IQ is negative? As clever as me, Zhu Huntang felt that by first admitting that his IQ was negative, and then successfully counter-attacking, such deep scheming and unpredictable methods proved that Zhu Huntang had an extremely high IQ. This is also the principle of making a positive out of a negative. Bai Hui looked at Lu Chang'an, who fell into a brief silence, and Zhu Huntang, who was showing his wit. He was very surprised. Zhu Huntang was actually able to defeat Lu Chang'an. Can he do the same? Bai Hui was thinking a little anxiously. What should she say at this time to prove herself? Yes, that's it, Bai Hui said hurriedly. Lu Chang'an looked at Bai Hui, then at Zhu Huntang, and picked up a pair of scissors on the coffee table without expression. Zhu Huntang was the first to react. He screamed and ran to Bai Hui's bedroom, shutting Bai Hui out without hesitation. What are you going to do? Bai Hui suspected that Lu Chang'an was going to do something to Zhu Huntang's little skirt and socks, but now that Zhu Huntang ran away, he looked at himself. Could he do the same to him? No. Didn't you say that they are all done by hand? That Bai Hui could barely resist, although he might not be able to resist in the end, but with this use of scissors, Bai Hui felt that he would be very scared, and would definitely stand there motionless because he did not dare to resist. Let him cut his skirt and socks into pieces. I'm scaring her. Lu Chang'an put down the scissors, looked at Bai Hui and smiled. Actually, you are better than her. Ah, how am I better than her? Bai Hui didn't expect that Lu Chang'an would actually praise himself and glanced at him a little shyly. Compare you two and think for yourself. Lu Chang'an finished speaking and walked out. He originally wanted to take Zhu Huntang to building one of Beilong Center to kill the robot dispatched by the gold coin or simply its clone container, but he himself was not. I couldn't go upstairs, so I was too lazy to take Zhu Huntang with me. How would you compare the two of you? Bai Hui couldn't help but blush, and turned her head to lean against the wall, letting the cool wall tiles cool her hot cheeks. She was actually being teased by him. What a disgusting person. Let me tell you something, Xiahua has signed up for the original glory competition at Kidian. Please give Xiahua a lot of support and likes. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Can Ru Xiahua. Chapter 686. Lu Chang'an went to building one of Beilong Center and crushed the robot that sent the gold coins to death. Then he confirmed with Zhongqing that Zhongqing had indeed been unable to contact Sunangzhou in the near future, so he rode a shared bicycle back to the Orange Garden community. En Nuan has changed into sweatpants and is practicing volleyball on the outer wall of the community. A circle is drawn on the wall. The volleyball bounces between the beautiful girl's clasped hands and the wall. The parabola left by the sphere, it's as perfect as a little volleyball hidden by a beautiful girl. Lu Chang'an ran over, held En Nuan's butt, and lifted her up. En Nuan screamed and turned around to see it was Lu Chang'an, then she laughed shyly, turned around and punched him with her fist. En Nuan was still lifted in the air. Lu Chang'an threw it away, and then held him in his arms. En Nuan couldn't stop laughing and said angrily, he suddenly ran over and got crazy. Is the matter done? It's done. Seeing how cute my little wife is, I can't help but give her a hug, Lu Chang'an said with a smile. Who is your little wife? You obviously treat me like a cat or dog toy, just play with it, En Nuan hummed, feeling a little surprised and satisfied. You are so strong, that's all. I like it better. Even though I have grown so tall, I can still have the illusion that I am a little bird. Little bird Yiren is a comparison between two people. It's not like talking about little bird Yiren alone. So as long as I'm here, you are truly little bird Yiren. It's not an illusion. Lu Chang'an threw her away with a backhand. On the back, holding the volleyball with one hand, he tapped the volleyball with his toes, held it with the other hand, and walked towards En Nuan's house. Is your mother back? Not yet. I don't know what I did. I probably thought that the afternoon was still long, so I might have done my hair. En Nuan pressed her cheek against his shoulder, lowering her voice and giggling. We have been there for a while. Be alone. What do you want to do? Lu Chang'an said warily. I am not a casual person. You're disgusting. I'm going to beat you up. En Nuan originally liked to put her arms around his neck and knock him down, but now he carried her on his back, which was perfect for him. He hugged his neck and shook her. Then, looking at his side face, he suddenly felt that his boyfriend seemed very handsome, and felt sweet in his heart, so he opened his mouth and bit his earlobe, and kissed his cheek bit by bit. Back in the house, En Nuan jumped off his back, put the volleyball away, and then asked Lu Chang'an to stay in the living room. After she washed her hands and face, she was going back to the room to change clothes. Lu Chang'an walked a few steps in the living room and then sat down on the sofa. He was thinking about telling En Nuan about his dropped cell phone later. He saw a notebook on the coffee table and the cover had some period characteristics, so he picked it up casually. Turned it over. It turned out to be Professor Liu's diary. Lu Chang'an had no intention of prying into other people's privacy, but there happened to be a bookmark where he opened it, and this page recorded that Lu Yuwang had met Yan Hui. Oh, it's you. Lu Chang'an read an article, which recorded what Yan Hui said to Lu Yuwang after Lu Yuwang met Yan Hui. Why did Yan Hui say this to Lu Yuwang? Lu Chang'an had no way of knowing, but it awakened some of his memories from that year. Yan Hui was pregnant for no apparent reason. Professor Lu Jianxi was willing to take the blame just because he wanted to quell the endless speculation and investigation and protect Yan Hua. Leaf. Lu Jianxi took the blame. After so many years, the rumors and gossip have faded away, but it is also confirmed that he did it. Probably only Yan Hui himself would say to Yan Qingcheng, Professor Lu is innocent. Lu Chang'an now recalled that he also believed that Yan Hui was not the kind of girl who would be so promiscuous that even the father of the child could not tell her that she was pregnant. Otherwise, he would not have made such a decision to protect her, even if he followed the trend. I was ready to leave Hunan University. Was Yan Hui framed for having a relationship while losing consciousness and self-control? He had suspected this back then, but there was no evidence or sign to further expand this suspicion. Now that Lu Chang'an knew about the existence of a special species like Zhu Huntang, he couldn't help but wonder if Yan Qingcheng was the same. But Zhu Huntang stayed in Su Mei's belly for almost a century. Yan Qingcheng was obviously a normal pregnancy process. Are you looking through my mother's diary? And Nuan changed her clothes and came out. Seeing Lu Chang'an holding a notebook in his hand, she secretly yelled, "Oh no, why did you neglect it?" Will Lu Chang'an appreciate the image of the literary girl constructed by Professor Lu in his diary, showing all kinds of charming charm? Take it. Lu Chang'an closed the diary without hesitation. He, his girlfriend, had a delicate heart, and every one of it was used to be jealous and guard against her mother. Ahem, it's not that I won't let you read it. I'll help you look through it. My mother has some diaries from back then, which recorded some things about your father. And Nuan looked at her boyfriend's face carefully, fearing to arouse his suspicion. My father felt longing for me, but I still felt that he would want to know. I know almost everything about him, but he never met Professor Lu back then, otherwise he would have become good friends with Professor Lu. Lu Chang'an said with some regret. That's right, my mother appreciates people with many talents. And Nuan looked at Lu Chang'an with her eyes. Lu Chang'an stopped answering. At this time, the door opened and Lu Yuwang walked in. She didn't do her hair, but she went shopping and bought some clothes. Are you looking through my diary? Lu Yuwang threw away the clothes bag and shopping bag in his hand and quickly snatched the diary away. He looked a little embarrassed and glared at Lu Chang'an and An Nuan. I flipped through it casually and saw the name of someone I knew, so I read that article. I stopped reading, and then An Nuan closed it. Lu Chang'an explained. Which one? Lu Yuwang asked quickly. The one about you meeting Yan Hui. How do you know Yan Hui? An Nuan asked quickly. Yan Hui is our classmate and the mother of Yan Qingcheng. She told me about our elder acquaintance. Lu Chang'an said to An Nuan. Why did you tell me such an important thing? An Nuan was shocked. It turned out that there was such a deep little vixen hidden beside Lu Chang'an. She only found out today. No wonder she saw Yan Qing during the 100 Regiments battle that day. Cheng Cheng talked to Lu Chang'an, and An Nuan felt a sense of inexplicable vigilance in her heart. This matter is not important, only you are the most important. Lu Chang'an quickly held his girlfriend in his arms to comfort her. Because she was hugged like this in front of Professor Lu, An Nuan felt a little shy and sweet, so she stopped letting her rolling jealousy control her words and deeds. She would make trouble with him when she was alone in the room tonight, anyway. He will stay. Making trouble with him alone in the study, and Nuan looked at Professor Lu. It would be great if Professor Lu couldn't go home tonight because of something, so that An Nuan could chat with Lu Chang'an in the study for a while before he answered obediently. Room to sleep. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 687. Lu Yuwang looked at An Nuan hiding in Lu Chang'an's arms. He looked shy and rolled his eyes. After glancing at Lu Yuwang, he continued to rub his cheek against Lu Chang'an's chest and hummed. With. How disgusting. In the evening, while Lu Chang'an was cooking, Lu Yuwang invited Professor Ling to come over and have dinner together. After the meal, the four of them played a table of mahjong. When the game reached 10:30, Professor Ling went back and the card game was over. And Nuan looked at the time and said to Lu Chang'an with some worry, "It's already 10:30. When you go back later, be careful on the road." Well, now that the new year is approaching, there are more people doing bad things. After saying that, and Nuan couldn't help but glance at her mother again, and found that her mother was holding her hands on her chest and looking at Nuan with a "you continue to perform" look. And Nuan couldn't help but blush a little, and picked up the mahjong pieces one by one and put them in the box. Originally, and Nuan just told Lu Chang'an to be careful on the road, and Lu Yuwang didn't think much about it, but she had to say, "There are many people who do bad things. Does Lu Chang'an need to be afraid of bad people? It should be the bad guy praying not to meet Lu Chang'an. Who here doesn't know that Lu Chang'an has extraordinary abilities?" "It's too late today, Chang'an, just stay here," Lu Yuwang said. Of course she didn't care whether Lu Chang'an was here or not, but she was too lazy to watch Nuan's deliberate performances there. "Then stay," Nuan said, imitating Lu Yuwang's tone and accent. Lu Yuwang hit her and said, "Why don't you go clean up the study room?" "She hit me," Nuan said to Lu Chang'an and snorted. Of course, she did not expect Lu Chang'an to help her seek justice. She put down the mahjong box in her hand and went to the study to clean it up. Lu Yuwang already knew that Nuan and Lu Chang'an had a relationship, but as an elder, could she just let Lu Chang'an sleep in Nuan's room? This was still necessary. As for whether Nuan secretly walked into the study or Lu Chang'an walked into Nuan's room at night, Lu Yuwang could only turn a blind eye. Nuan lingered in the study for a long time, carefully laying out the sheets and quilts. If she just dealt with it casually, wouldn't it mean that she thought Lu Chang'an would definitely come to her room? Lu Yuwang chatted with Lu Chang'an for a while and then went to wash up. Lu Chang'an was walking to the study room. Nuan just walked out and ran into his arms. She held her hands in front of her chest and said "ouch" delicately, but ignored her. Lu Chang'an walked out. At night, everyone went back to their rooms to sleep. In the middle of the night, Lu Chang'an entered Nuan's room and returned to the study the next morning. During breakfast, Lu Yuwang seemed to be a little angry due to lack of sleep, and he still had a bad temper when he came to be his aunt. He became picky about Lu Chang'an's cooking skills. Nuan unexpectedly did not speak for Lu Chang'an and blushed. He lowered his head and bit the rice noodle, his red lips twitching little by little. There was no class today, so Lu Chang'an went back after breakfast because Lu Yuwang said that the exam would start tomorrow and asked Lu Chang'an and Nuan to review carefully. If the results of a certain exam were ugly, they would have to be beaten. When Lu Chang'an returned home, Zhou Shuling asked him if he had had breakfast. After getting the answer, he continued to peel the meat from the bones of the tube. She sawed off a section of the large tube bone, then dug a straw into the bone, and asked Zhou Dongdong and Shang Guandandan to hold a tube bone and suck the bone marrow inside to drink. "Do you want a drink?" Zhou Shuling took out another tube bone and looked at Lu Chang'an expectantly. "I won't drink, it's too boring." Lu Chang'an shook his head. "I cut it off before making the soup, and then added ingredients to the soup. It doesn't taste greasy, and it has a salty and spicy taste. It's delicious." Zhou Shuling insisted that Lu Chang'an try it. "Are you planning to invent a new dish again?" Lu Chang'an had no choice but to take it. "I saw someone eating that tube bone noodle soup. The noodle soup is not very good, but a large tube bone is placed in it, which seems to be quite tempting." Zhou Shuling pointed to the pot. "I tried it and I've already eaten the powder, now I'm eating the bones." "Why don't you eat?" Lu Chang'an looked at her clean lips, which didn't look greasy at all. "I'm afraid of getting fat," Zhou Shuling said in a low voice. This food is so nutritious that she is already afraid that her buttocks will become fuller. The fatness seems to be concentrated on her buttocks now, in case it spreads to her thighs in the future. "Well, my legs have become like chicken legs, which would be very ugly." Still self-aware, Lu Chang'an nodded in agreement, walked over and sat down with Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong, and said, This food is indeed very nutritious. In ancient times, children from princes and nobles often suffered from malnutrition or poor health. I was so thin that I boiled a big pot of pork ribs every time, then cracked open the bones, took out all the marrow, and put it into a small bowl with various seasonings. It was extremely delicious and I couldn't make up for it after eating it for a while. It's more effective than bird's nest, shark's fin, etc. This is the origin of knocking on the bones and eating the marrow, which is now often used to describe the criminal behavior of capitalists in exploiting the working class. I'm malnourished. Lu Chang'an thought he heard wrongly, turned his head and looked at Zhou Dongdong who was speaking. I'm malnourished and thin. Zhou Dongdong jumped up and down, and when he saw that Brother Chang'an didn't seem to hear clearly, he quickly added. Lu Chang'an finished sucking his penis, and then stretched out his hand to press Zhou Dongdong's belly. Are you still malnourished and thin? You are so fat that you have become a ball. Have you forgotten that you are round? Zhou Dongdong touched his belly sadly. He was round, but what does this have to do with his malnutrition and thin body? Shang Guandandan chuckled, Zhou Dongdong was so cute. Lu Chang'an took some soy sauce and simply mixed the ingredients, then picked off the meat from the tube bone and ate it with everyone else. Although Zhou Dongdong didn't eat a small bowl of bone marrow, he felt that Brother Chang'an had cooked it. This food is also very delicious. After eating it, I no longer feel malnourished or weak. Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan went downstairs. The first thing Shang Guandandan did was to turn on the electric heating table and then turn on the TV. I'm going to Antarctica soon, Lu Chang'an casually said to Shang Guandandan, take care of the two of them. You don't need to tell me this, I will take good care of the others. Shang Guandandan nodded lightly. The master of the harem in the mother-in-law world is of course not only fighting with his daughters-in-law. The most important thing is of course to assume the responsibility of the queen mother and protect her. Good to them. That's good, I'll definitely come back before the Chinese New Year. That's good. Dongdong mom has been saying that she wants to have a more prosperous New Year this year, and she also wanted to ask you if you have any New Year's goods that need to be purchased. Let's go shopping for the New Year together, Lu Chang'an said expectantly. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 688. Lu Chang'an has no particular obsession with traditional festivals. For a long time, many festivals have been forgotten with the process of history. Lu Chang'an did not commemorate those festivals that only he might remember or know about. Let the past pass. But for him now, he still has to celebrate the New Year and buy some toys and snacks for Zhou Dongdong and Shang Guandandan. And new clothes, it feels good. Zhou Shuling is not young, but Lu Chang'an can think that if she can receive some gifts during the New Year, I am afraid she will be the happiest. Just 20 years ago, the New Year atmosphere was very strong. Many families started busy preparing for the New Year on the first day of the 12th lunar month, but now there are very few people who still remember to send the kitchen god to offer sacrifices to the kitchen god on the 23rd day of the 12th lunar month. 23 sacrifices to the stove, 24 cleans the house, 25 makes tofu, 26 kills pigs and buys meat, 27 kills chickens, 28 makes dough, 29 offers sacrifices to ancestors and gods, and cooks for a day on New Year's Eve. Stay overnight, walk all over the streets on the first and second day of the lunar month. Lu Chang'an's plan was to spend New Year's Eve at home with Zhou Dongdong, Shang Guandandan, and Zhou Shuling, go to his girlfriend's house to pay New Year greetings on New Year's Day, and go back to visit Qin Peng with Qin Yanan on the second day of New Year. It's a bit early, after all, Qin Peng's place is actually not available until the 15th day of the lunar month. Some people want to pay Qin Peng a New Year's greeting during the Chinese New Year, so they may have queued up to arrange it 2 or 3 years earlier. The premise of these plans is that Lu Chang'an must be able to return to Junsha before New Year's Eve and cannot travel to Antarctica like ordinary people do. So Lu Chang'an, under Zonking's arrangement, took a private plane to Zujia's overseas airport. Punta Arenas. What makes Punta Arenas more friendly to Chinese people is that it belongs to Chile and can apply for a visa on arrival, but the country next door cannot. When we come here, we are only more than 1,000 kilometers away from the Antarctic coastline. As one of the southernmost cities in the world, the temperature is low all year round. Because of its special geographical location, it has become an important tourist city and supply base. Antarctic scientific expedition teams have all been here. The last time Lu Chang'an came here was probably close to 200 years ago. At that time, he had a large number of railways built in the neighboring country of Brazil. After arriving in Punta Arenas, it was very simple to go to Antarctica. Lu Chang'an chose an airline to charter a flight to King George Island in Antarctica. For DAP Airlines, it is common for Chinese people to charter flights to Antarctica. Yes, they even know about Hanfu, because there are quite a few beautiful girls who come to Antarctica wearing Hanfu to check in. The plane landed at the airport at the Frico Research Station in Chile. The airport is not big and the runway is very crude. It is only suitable for taking off and landing small planes. It is naturally impossible to take off and land those comfortable large planes in this place, even if Miss Zhu wants to come. When visiting Antarctica, it is impossible to fly on your own Airbus A380. The only flight attendant on the plane told Lu Chang'an that the return trip was like taking a bus. When he saw the plane parked on the runway, he could run over and wave to signal that the plane was open. There was no security check, no boarding pass, and no check-in. This has nothing to do with whether the flight is chartered or not. This applies to both ordinary passengers and chartered passengers. Lu Chang'an got off the plane and started wandering around the Antarctic continent. The Antarctic continent is a truly free land. It does not belong to any country. As long as you do not intrude into the scope of some scientific research stations, no one will care about you. When Lu Chang'an walked out of the Chilean Freak Scientific Research Station, he saw the Russian Scientific Research Station. The Scientific Research Station is right next to it, and behind the Chilean Scientific Research Station, you can still see the flying 5-star red flag, which is the Great Wall Scientific Research Station. In this area of the season, looking around, it seems to be an ordinary northern Gobi. There is no ice and snow in people's impressions. The peaks are covered with snow, there are huge icebergs floating on the sea, and groups of penguins are swaying. The desolate barren land, this was Lu Chang'an's first impression when he came to Antarctica this time. In fact, it was similar before, maybe more desolate. After all, there are many more scientific research stations now. Lu Chang'an slowly circled along the bay and took more than half an hour to reach the vicinity of the Great Wall Station. However, he did not enter the construction area of the scientific research station. Instead, he came to the nearby hillside and looked around. Tesla brought Sunangzio and other people and animals to the Antarctic. Even if he planned to use hostages to lure Lu Chang'an if he could not capture him, it was impossible to hold a sign at the airport to pick him up. Tesla always leaves some clues for Lu Chang'an to find her. Lu Chang'an looked around for a while, then he bulged his eyes to look for clues. The details that he could capture increased with the bulge of his eyes, but in the end he didn't find much, so he pressed his eyeballs and returned to normal appearance. At this time, a tracked off-road vehicle rolled up behind Lu Chang'an. It moved forward recklessly, like the king of the polar regions. It made a rumbling sound and did not stop until it reached Lu Chang'an's side. The undulating terrain did not pose any obstacles to it. Lu Chang'an looked at the gold coins coming off the car without much surprise. Gold coin is no longer a traditional robot. Its thinking or its true existence is just a piece of data wandering on the internet. As long as the human data network exists, it will have a place to stay and upload data from a terminal robot at any time. And then download yourself to another terminal thousands of miles away. Human beings may eventually live like this. Lu Chang'an even feels that this trend is unavoidable. Even now, for many people, the body that will age and collapse is nothing worth cherishing. If you can let yourself throw it away in the form of data, the body lasts forever, but I'm afraid there are not a few people who make this choice. Lord Blood Ancestor, we meet again. Jincoin was wearing a thick down jacket. In this cold area, its skin became whiter and the blue in its eyes became clearer. If I just meet you, I don't have to come all the way here. What I'm curious about is why your master Tesla didn't transform herself into like you, Lu Chang'an asked calmly and doubtfully. How do you know I'm not Tesla? Maybe Tesla likes to play robot, Goldcoin chuckled, echoing strangely in the empty Antarctic continent. Lu Chang'an also smiled and said, if I didn't need you to lead the way and heard your laughter, I would like to blow your head off. Actually, it doesn't matter if you blow my head off. I can still control the remaining body to interact with you, and at the same time control this car to take you to your destination, Jincoin still said with a smile. So Lu Chang'an laughed and blew its head off, because then it couldn't continue to use words to provoke him, and its laughter was really annoying. Shang Guandandan's laughter was actually like a little giggle. But Lu Chang'an is not tired of Shangguan's indifferent laughter. The sound system of the gold coin was destroyed. It took off its head and returned to the tracked off-road vehicle. Lu Chang'an also sat on it, but the next moment the sound of the gold coin came from the voice system of the car again, Lord Blood Ancestor, and then we are about to head to our destination, the continent of New Rodinia. I recommend a good book, 9-star Poisonous Milk. Please be patient, everyone, Xiahua will not just write a messy ending. This plot has already been constructed, and it can be regarded as the final explanation set by Lu Chang'an. After this plot, Changsheng is considered to be a complete series in the sense of serialization, but Xiaohuaban is reluctant to let it become an ending with no follow-up, and will always write some interesting sequels from time to time, including Lu Chang'an returning home for the new year. Plot, but please don't give Xiahua another Ad 1 for this unfinished work because of this. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 689. The tracked off-road vehicle drove through the gravel Gobi area and entered the large ice sheet covering 98% of the entire Antarctic continent. After leaving the coastline, the wind speed began to decrease significantly. Lu Chang'an looked at the instruments in the car and saw that the wind speed dropped from the highest of 40 meters per second to 20 meters per second. This is the level from a typhoon to an ordinary strong wind. Lu Chang'an remembers that 30 years ago, there was a super typhoon in Qionghai that exceeded 70 meters per second, far exceeding the highest standard of level 17. In Antarctica, the wind speed can even reach more than 100 meters per second, but the data observed by humans is more than 90 meters per second. The wind is blowing and the clouds are flying. Lu Chang'an squinted his eyes while sitting on the bumpy tracked off-road vehicle. He ignored the gold coins he had been thinking about and entered a state of sensory shutdown, just like the state he had been in a long, long time ago. In such a state, he had no sense of the passage of external time. When Lu Chang'an opened his eyes again, he looked at the date displayed on the instrument. 2 days had passed. This time was the polar day season in Antarctica. Lu Chang'an looked at outside the car. The entire sky turned into a milky white and foggy sky. Everything in the field of vision seemed to be covered by Antarctic ice and snow, and a milky white light as thick as milk was flowing, making it difficult to see distance. Ordinary people's vision completely failed in such weather, and they were no different from blind people. This is a natural weather phenomenon unique to Antarctica. It is caused by the mutual reflection of light between ice, snow particles, and clouds. Lu Chang'an observed it with interest for a while, but then found it boring again. Just when he was about to continue squinting for a while, Goldcoin's voice came from the voice system, Lord Blood Ancestor, this is our testing ground for dominating part of the Earth. Look at this milky white sky, isn't it particularly beautiful? It turns out that the accidents that occurred during the Antarctic scientific research and exploration due to the milky daytime weather were all caused by you, Lu Chang'an felt that this was a very effective method. In such a climate environment, what kind of secret base could be established? There is absolutely no way to detect it using conventional detection equipment. The scientific expedition team passing by here noticed the appearance of the milky white sky, and either retreated or went far away, and would not try to pass through, because in such an environment, no equipment can play a normal role. In Antarctica, in such a place, equipment failure often means major accidents or even death of all personnel. There were many accidents a few decades ago, but now there are very few. It's a pity that no one regards this place as a mysterious place to spread its popularity, similar to Bermuda. Jincoin said with regret, turning his headless body to face Jean Lumming. The sound came from the car's speakers. In a sense, robots do have advantages that are difficult for humans to achieve. It is impossible for ordinary people to drive for 2 days and 2 nights without sleep, let alone chat happily even if their heads are lost. But Lu Chang'an naturally rejects robots, because robots are not considered living entities at all, and Lu Chang'an has been on the earth for so many years, and he has always been accompanied by colorful lives. Now that something like a robot suddenly appears, giving the feeling of rejection he brings is no less than that of the impending cataclysm. What is the difference between robots and regular creatures? Where are the boundaries? Under what circumstances will the definitions between each other be blurred? Lu Chang'an has never thought about these questions. He is not a philosopher who will always think about these questions, because life is too long. If you always think about questions that have no answers or vague answers, time will become extremely long and torturous. By the time you realize you get the answer, the question has often become meaningless. The tracked off-road vehicle was completely unaffected by the milky white sky and shuttled in a world where the light melted into milk. When the tone of gold coins sounded like announcing the subway station, the line of sight finally returned to normal. The snow-capped world seemed to have come to an end, and there was a vast expanse of land in front of it. A lush green temperate vegetation area. This surprised Lu Chang'an. The overall transformation of the Earth by gold coins and Tesla may be insignificant, but they are really doing it, because he glanced at the map on the tracked off-road vehicle, which showed that this is still the Antarctic ice cap area, and the average thickness of the ice sheet in this place exceeds 2,000 meters, and the thickest place reaches more than 4,000 meters. The tracked off-road vehicle stopped, and its location was already on the edge of the cliff. After Lu Chang'an got off the car, he looked over. It was as if a huge piece of the Antarctic ice cap had been dug out, revealing the real Antarctic land, not the land covered with layers of ice and snow. On the edge of this land where temperate plants grow, there are thick ice cliffs that are thousands of meters or even 2,000 or 3,000 meters high. In the center of the land is a square glass house with a shape similar to that of Sunan. The one at Xiang University is not much different, but the one here occupies a wider area. Lord Blood Ancestor, in the past all the continents were basically still connected together. We called it the Rodinia supercontinent. But when the global ice freeze came, the continent under our feet was fortunately separated from Rodinia. The sub-supercontinent split off and became the only life arc that could absorb sunlight at that time. Do you still remember where you were at that time? What kind of biological state was it in? The headless body of the gold coin followed Lu Chang'an, his voice, but it came from the car. It was as if someone was shouting at him with a loudspeaker from behind. Lu Chang'an did not look back. He thought calmly for a moment and shook his head. Maybe he was frozen by the ice layer several thousand meters thick, so there is no picture at all. The impression remains. Generally speaking, I am used to this kind of situation. When crustal movement, volcanic eruptions, or geomagnetic rotation change the global environment, I will naturally wake up again. Sometimes some extreme climates appear on the Earth, which are completely unpredictable. For example, a large area of water, an entire lake, or an entire sea is suddenly frozen. At this time, the creatures in it, even supernatural life forms, are frozen in the ice. It is difficult to escape from the ice layer that is more than a kilometer long, front, rear, left, right, up and down. We now call this continent New Rodinia to commemorate the global ice age. At that time, this continent became the only life zone on the Earth, and a highly developed technological civilization evolved here, far beyond of today's human beings. Lu Chang'an felt a little regretful, because he actually missed such a technological civilization, but compared to the history of the Earth, how short is the current human civilization? The highly developed scientific and technological civilization mentioned by Jincoin, even if it exists for 10,000 years, 100,000 years, or even 1 million years, it is just a fleeting moment. The gold coins or Teslas around you must have a deep connection with this kind of technological civilization. Are you guessing the relationship between me, Mr. Tesla, and the technological civilization of that time? Your idea is correct. Mr. Tesla is the only surviving descendant of the ancient civilization. She was resurrected in the 18th century. It has promoted the process of modern human civilization, but now that the catastrophe is approaching, she has no time to wait for the development of human beings. The gold coin touched Lu Chang'an lightly. We must push it again, using your special physique, allowing all mankind to evolve. It turns out that she is a descendant of an ancient civilization. Lu Chang'an is a little disappointed. Such a descendant of an ancient civilization should have used some of the most cutting-edge technologies at the time to enable her to be resurrected in the modern era. However, this kind of technological application cannot be repeated, at least she is now. It can't be widely used yet, so I decided to focus on him. It would be great if they were the same kind as him. Lu Chang'an sighed softly. After all, no phoenix would come to live in the sycamore tree he planted. What catastrophe? Lu Chang'an asked. Human beings are so fragile. All kinds of problems occur on the earth. It is a catastrophe for mankind. He has no way of guessing what kind of gold coin it is. The most recent one is the magnetic pole shift. We all know that every once in a while, the North and South Pole will switch, and the last time the North and South magnetic fields switched was 7 to 8 million years ago, which means it will happen at any time now. A magnetic field transformation occurs. Well, the Earth's magnetic field is much weaker now than when I was fished out of the underground river many years ago. It is only close to half of the strength. Then Lu Chang'an nodded. When the Earth's magnetic field flips, the entire Earth's magnetic field will attenuate to a state close to nothing in a short period of time. At that time, the solar wind will blow away the Earth's atmosphere. Of course, the ozone layer will also be gone. The interior of the Earth will lose its magnetic field. Control, volcanoes, earthquakes, and tsunamis will also occur frequently. Wait a minute, when the Earth's magnetic field flips, it will indeed attenuate, but it's not as serious as you said. I've experienced it many times. Lu Chang'an didn't take it seriously. It will return to normal strength soon. Antarctica will still be Antarctica. The Arctic is still the Arctic. In short, this is also a catastrophe. In short, you have enough reasons. For the sake of the Earth and mankind, you must treat me as some kind of experimental subject, or let me be sacrificed for your plan. Lu Chang'an is of course willing to contribute to mankind, but why should he hand himself over? Give gold coins and Teslas? A robot, a descendant of an ancient civilization, could not trust them at all. When Lian Zhou Dongdong saw a stranger and suspected that the other person was a bad person, he would always stare and scare him. Yes, Jincoin admitted openly. Before that, let me meet Tesla, Lu Chang'an said, looking at the glass house in the distance. This is such a beautiful scenery. If it is developed into a tourist attraction and the house is converted into a hotel, I think the business will be very good. It's okay to come on vacation, but Lu Chang'an doesn't want him to stay here. It's like a scene in the sky, not like the human world, but what Lu Chang'an loves most is the mortal world. Jincoin didn't speak, he just pointed at the glass house in front of him. A large helicopter took off and flew over. I thought you would use a more technological means of transportation, Lu Chang'an said, a little disappointed. Practical and effective are more important, the speaker on the tracked off-road vehicle said. The helicopter stopped on the edge of the cliff in front of Lu Chang'an, and the first thing to jump out of the helicopter was gold coins. Lu Chang'an looked back at the headless robot body. The gold coin ran over and kicked the remaining body it was still using just now onto the snow. Lord Blood Ancestor, you should realize that just like you have crushed my body many times and are still helpless to me, you have to resist, escape, be free, refuse to take responsibility, refuse to sacrifice for mankind. These struggles and unjust cooperation is meaningless. Jin Coin raised the corner of his mouth slightly and pointed at the broken body of the robot on the ground. Look, in fact, you are just like it. After all, you are just a vehicle carrying a certain function. What you carry it's just the code for human immortality. When we study you thoroughly, you will be as free as it. As he spoke, the gold coin kicked again, kicking the robot's remains off the cliff. After a long time, the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground was vaguely heard. Lu Chang'an felt that he had a good reason to hate robots. He looked at the gold coin expressionlessly and stopped trying to explode it for the time being. Immediately afterwards, a familiar face to Lu Chang'an, Sunangxiu, stepped out of the helicopter. Sunangxiu was still wearing a white long coat and a pair of glasses that she didn't know if she could still connect to the data system here. Her face was a little haggard, and she looked at Lu Chang'an in surprise, as if she didn't realize that she would see Lu Chang'an here. Even before boarding the helicopter, I didn't know who I was going to see next. Following Sunangxiu was a blonde girl, a typical Russian beauty, but her skin was not covered with fine fuzz. She opened her mouth when she saw Lu Chang'an, and then said to Lu Chang'an, "Oh, you were caught too. I'm Avrona, you may have heard my name. I used to be Rasputin. Where's my snake?" Lu Chang'an was a little surprised to see Avrona. He had heard this name from Jin Coin, but he had no idea who she was. Rasputin, this is a natural development. The snake in Avrona's mouth also walked down from the helicopter. She was a dark-colored and cold woman with a vague Jiangnan water town style. Avrona said to Lu Chang'an very actively, "It's Xiaobai. You were the Suzhou's who back then, right? You left it in linen before going to sea, and it still resents you." The corners of Lu Chang'an's mouth raised slightly, and he nodded as a greeting. Although there was still a lot of resentment in Xiaobai's eyes, Lu Chang'an could understand, how could a snake become a human? By the way, the former Rasputin and current Avrona were also turned into humans from a bear. These magical beings were probably the reason why they were captured by Tesla. Lu Chang'an was not the only one Tesla wanted to study. The hidden mysteries of life, even the ancient civilizations of the time, did not explore the bottom truth. It's okay now, we are all caught. I once thought that we were already the strongest in the world. Who would have thought that this person named Tesla is stronger than us? Avrona obviously thinks that Lu Chang'an already has it. Prisoner is such an identity. Father Mrs. Karnstein was the last to get off the helicopter. Compared with the others, she was the most haggard. Her eyes are sunken and her skin is pale. Although she fits the original image of a vampire very well, she should actually be a more beautiful woman. There is no doubt that she is the most frequently studied subject by Tesla. Lu Chang'an saw many black chips implanted under the skin of her arms. There was not much hair left, only a few scattered strands covering the top of the head. Lu Chang'an narrowed his eyes, spit out a tiny drop of blood, and shot it into Mrs. Karnstein's lips with a flick of his finger. In an instant, Mrs. Karnstein changed. Her hair became dense again, growing as fast as black liquid flowing, covering her soft back. Her pale skin became rosy again, and she stretched out her hair. She scratched the skin with her fingers and pulled out all the chips. Then the bloody arm quickly returned to its original shape, and a vampire image that looked like the most elegant work of art returned to her body. How miraculous! No matter how we extract, copy, or cultivate, the products we research cannot have such an instant magical effect. Behind everyone, a beautiful girl made a voice of admiration. Red hair. Double tail. White shirt. Suspender skirt. Slim body shape. The Tesla that Lu Chang'an had seen back then looked like this, and he was the last one to get off the helicopter. Lu Chang'an was not surprised that her appearance was not correct at all, or maybe she just wanted to appear like this today. What he cared about was that Tesla was pulling a coffin. Bronze coffin. It is almost identical to Shang Guandandan's coffin. Are you wondering why I have a coffin like this? Because this is the eternal cabinet that the ancient civilization tried its best to build only two. One protects me, and the other, oh, Shang Guandandan regarded it as, he had a coffin and painted a lot of colors on it. Tesla looked back and said, it does look like a coffin. I really had good intentions in order to get you. At this point, I had no choice but to do it. After all, my previous conservative and gentle plans failed. Tesla then said regretfully. We tried to use Guo Yanhui and Lu Yuang. Their bodies have been modified. In theory, they are very suitable for you and can carry out better human reproduction plans. Unfortunately, due to various mistakes, they failed repeatedly. You may have noticed it. Some problems disappeared quickly. I just didn't expect you to reappear with a different identity for a short time. Jincoin walked to Tesla and said in the same regretful tone. So that's it. Lu Chang'an looked at the gold coins and Tesla. He had no intention of asking for more details. He just wanted to know who was behind the arrangements and troubles for many things that he thought were strange or coincidental back then. He glanced at Mrs. Karnstein. Although he didn't trust the woman who called him father at the beginning of their reunion, the 2 injections of blood, like a kind of recognition ceremony, made Lu Chang'an feel that she was worthy. Tried to be accepted. Sensing the entrustment in Lu Chang'an's eyes, Mrs. Karnstein hugged Sunangxiu beside her without hesitation and disappeared from the place like a ball of black smoke. They ran away. Avrona shook her head presciently and said, those who couldn't escape, I ran away several times. Xiaobai ignored Avrona and followed Mrs. Karnstein's black smoke-like figure that was already far away. Avrona stopped where she was, thought for a while, and simply sat down. She was just a bear and didn't want to move much in the cold season, not to mention that she was surrounded by magnetic field disrupting devices laid out by Tesla and gold coins. As long as it is a creature on Earth, it cannot tell the direction at all. Even the most basic ability to distinguish front, back, left, right, up and down will be lost. Where can it run? They have great confidence in you. Tesla lifted the suspenders on her skirt. I'll catch you first, and then I'll catch them back. Lu Chang'an had not spoken since he saw the helicopter appear. At this time, he was not going to talk nonsense. He disappeared on the spot, rushed to Tesla's side in an instant, and blew the robot's gold coins head off with one punch. Lord Blood Ancestor, geez, why do you always like to do such meaningless things? The voice of gold coins came from the helicopter again. The gold coin is actually a part of your consciousness. Only by killing you will it truly disappear. Lu Chang'an thought of this possibility. Otherwise, how could such a robot gain Tesla's greatest trust? When Scylla appeared together, Lu Chang'an had this strong intuition that he was one with her. That's right. Tesla did not deny that there was no point in avoiding this issue because Lu Chang'an could not kill her. No matter how primitive life evolved, the power of the natural body was limited and it was difficult to fight against technology. The power of the coffin behind her had disintegrated, forming pieces of metal the size of fingernails, floating in the air, surrounding Tesla. Lu Chang'an saw the scene as if she had seen it before. The next moment, these metal blocks will cover her body and become her armor. Lu Chang'an once fought against Sunangxiu, and Sunangxiu wore a similar suit of armor. It was probably a technological product based on the same principle, but it was obviously not as powerful as Tesla. Lu Chang'an still ignored him and punched Tesla in front of him. Those metal pieces instantly formed a floating protective shield in front of her, resisting Lu Chang'an's fist. A majestic force rebounded, and his body was immediately pushed back dozens of meters by the force. "It's interesting," Lu Chang'an laughed. This rebounding force felt so familiar. It was exactly the force he sent out, all hitting back at him. "It will be more interesting," Tesla also laughed. She walked towards Lu Chang'an, and the metal pieces no longer floated in front of her, but covered her body, connecting with each other to form a Gata set of armor. With the Tesla armor on her body, she walked slowly but exuded majestic momentum. The hard ice in Antarctica, which had been silent for countless thousands of years, left clear footprints one by one. She suddenly quickened her pace. Like an erupting armored war god, turned into a black stream of light and punched Lu Chang'an in the chest with violent power. Lu Chang'an's body was like snow particles blown up by a helicopter, spinning in the air and being thrown out, hitting the ice heavily. Traces of cracks spread around his landing point. He kept going backwards and hitting the ice. The broken ice blocks were piled up into mountains by his body, and finally the force of his being knocked away was relieved. "Isn't it interesting?" "Ha ha." Tesla laughed like a gold coin. "Back then, I asked you to watch the nuclear explosion just to test your physical strength. It's a pity that you didn't dare to enter the nuclear explosion with me. Central position, now let me test your physical strength again. Try the extremely small hydrogen bomb in the Eternal Cabinet. Don't be afraid. It is nuclear fusion triggered by the explosion of metallic hydrogen. There is no radiation pollution at all, in fact, it is extremely micro. After being transformed, it is not very powerful, just dozens of times more powerful than ordinary Ottocan HMX explosives." Just as Lu Chang'an stood up, he saw Tesla raise his palm, and seemingly ordinary 5.8 mm-sized bullets shot out like pear blossoms in a rainstorm. Before he could make any blocking action, one of them one shot had already hit his body. "Ha ha ha." Tesla watched Lu Chang'an's body being blown up into the sky, while other bullets formed an overwhelming and devastating explosion effect all around, and his eyes burned with extreme excitement. Tesla raised her hands. She was a little surprised that Lu Chang'an's body did not break into pieces. This was also a test of his healing ability, but when his body flew into the sky, why did it not fall down for a long time? Tesla raised his head, and sound waves that could not be detected by human ears spread above the clouds. This sound wave was captured by Tesla's armor and could not be interpreted into a meaning that humans can directly understand, but some frequencies are similar to the sound waves emitted by certain social animals when they summon their own kind. "Master Tesla, the animals in the base are rioting, they are rushing over." The sound of gold coins came from the helicopter. "What's going on? Analyze it immediately," Tesla ordered. Then she saw some white spots and some black spots on the distant horizon. "That's a penguin." Antarctica has the largest number of penguins in the world, including emperor penguins, Adrian penguins, golden penguins, chinstrap penguins, king penguins, rocky penguins, and flashy penguins. The total number of these penguins exceeds 100 million. Tesla only felt that the densely packed penguins appearing on the horizon seemed to be penguins from the entire Antarctica. These cute little animals appear so densely, moving their short legs neatly, but they have a military aura that makes people's scalp numb, as if they are crushing the Antarctic ice cap. "Master Tesla, there are tens of millions of king crabs coming here," Jincoin said strangely. "These thousands of king crabs are still the huge population discovered when Sunangzio still controlled the Tesla Biological Research Institute. They were originally. It is a disaster for the Antarctic biosphere because they have no natural enemies here. Master Tesla, there are countless krill in the surrounding seas. It is conservatively estimated to be tens of millions of tons. When there are enough of these densely packed little creatures, you can't help but feel terrified. The waters around Antarctica are rich in krill resources. They are the bottom layer of the entire Antarctic biosphere, but their number is hundreds of millions of tons distributed in the Pacific, Atlantic and Indian Oceans. In the south, tens of millions of tons are now concentrated and surrounding. There are also whales, Mr. Tesla, all the whales in the world must be here. Big octopus, big octopus. How come there is such a big octopus? It feels like it can pull an aircraft carrier into the bottom of the sea. Oh my God, Master Tesla, there is also a strange creature. They are balls covered with tentacles. They roll over the seafloor and crawl out of various trenches. We have never seen this before. A creature, Jincoin retrieved horrific images from surveillance cameras everywhere and reported to Tesla in fear. Tesla no longer cared about looking for Lu Chang'an, who had completely disappeared. He ran back to the helicopter and retrieved various monitoring images on the console. She couldn't help but take a breath, because a search of the footage from the maritime surveillance ship showed that a large whirlpool appeared in the nearby sea, and the creatures with abnormal behavior discovered by the gold coins were all gathering next to the large whirlpool. This was obviously abnormal. What is this vortex? Goldcoin remotely controls the drone on the surveillance ship to take off to capture clearer and more detailed images of the maelstrom. Tesla stared closely at the monitoring screen and saw countless large marine creatures vaguely visible in the large whirlpool with an incalculable diameter. Many species had never been seen before, and some physical characteristics belonged entirely to prehistoric creatures. The whirlpool is going to form a waterspout. The vortex rotated at high speed, and the air pressure in the center continued to decrease. The water flow was attracted upward around the center of the vortex to form a vortex. This vortex continued to stretch into the sky, and soon connected the sea surface to the heavy clouds. Those sea creatures are rising into the sky in waterspouts. Tesla was very annoyed by the sound of gold coins. These sea creatures no longer followed the survival instinct. They seemed fearless and only wanted to sacrifice themselves. They were born in the ocean, and they should have died in the ocean. They never thought of leaving this homeland. At this moment, they had forgotten all their instincts and had the will to die on their own. Those tens of thousands of tons of krill. The king crab that covers the bottom of the sea. Those huge alien creatures that look like ancient behemoths. There are also common marine creatures such as whales and giant octopuses that people are familiar with. At this moment they are so unified, following the same will. The waterspout finally broke away from the sea, reached into the air, and swam into the clouds. Tesla jumped out of the helicopter and looked up at the dark clouds above his head. This dark cloud spread over the sea, with streaks of lightning jumping in the clouds, and bursts of thunderous riots like the footsteps of some kind of creature walking on the clouds. Did this thing absorb those sea creatures just now? Or by condensing their vitality and blood to strengthen themselves? Tesla had no way of knowing, so he just looked around in panic. This was unscientific. Tesla stepped back involuntarily, because she saw the dark cloud above her head being pushed aside by a piece of fingernail. She couldn't help but feel weak in her legs. What is this? That nail belonged to a sharp claw. Have you ever seen a dragon? A dragon roar came through the clouds. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 690. The dragon's roar passed through the dark clouds and echoed on the Antarctic continent. In this snowy world, it was like a hot magma that melted all the ice. The penguins seemed to have witnessed something, jumping happily and rolling on the ice. They were like black and white balls rolling. The ice cap thousands of meters thick seemed to be unable to withstand the tossing of the penguin army. The sound of breaking. Tesla clearly saw the legendary creature, the dragon. Not the dinosaurs that once existed. No biological overlord that has existed in any era can compare with it. It stands high above the clouds, overlooking the world, and it seems that the modern civilized world has returned to the mythical age in an instant. Or it may tear apart a corner of the true face of the world, allowing arrogant humans to re-examine the mysteries of nature. Dragon, the real dragon, the totem and belief of all living things, the will of life. Tesla finally understood why so many marine creatures gathered here, because they came to pay homage to the most ancient and powerful source of life. It is not the five-clawed golden dragon on the emperor's robe, nor is it an image reworked by literati, although it is very close. It is entrenched in the clouds, and its head covered with thick scales stretches out from the dark clouds. It opened its mouth, bit Tesla between two iceberg-like huge and sharp teeth, and then rushed into the thick ice. The Antarctic ice cap, which is thousands of meters thick, seems to be just a thick layer of snowflakes, soft and easy to bottom out. It stopped drilling at the bottom of the ice cap and adjacent to the frozen soil. Its body was also buried under the thick ice cap, and then it spit out Tesla. Its giant claws stretched out and slapped Tesla, who had resealed the eternal cabinet, into the hard frozen soil, one after another, as if to slap Tesla into the ground where he would never be able to turn over. After it finished all this, it raised its head and moved the ice cap, calmly looking at a dead city under the ice cap. It turns out that there really is a lost continent under the thousands of meters of ice in Antarctica. This is the ancient civilization where Tesla originated. This is a city without any vitality. The architecture and layout are similar to modern cities. The lost continent should sink forever, just like in countless mass extinctions. Many lives have no longer left traces of their existence, whether it is a lost civilization or some simple structured primitive creature that once spread across the sea, there is no difference. It emerged from the bottom of the ice sheet, shaking the surrounding ice, and buried Tesla's eternity cabinet nearly 5,000 meters below the surface. The dragon twisted its body again, spun around and flew into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. Avrona was sitting not far away. She still maintained the original posture of sitting down, but her eyes were empty and her expression was blank. As a well-informed bear, she thought she was an ancient life, but her mind went blank after being shocked. Dragon. Does this really exist? No wonder he was able to transform Ziobai. Is it because the people in that area have always worshipped him and used him as a totem? Avrona's body swayed, as if it were frozen knots, and she fell on the ice in a stiff posture. The bear felt the cold because of fear. Not long after, Avrona got up again because she saw Lu Chang'an jump down from the clouds and land in front of her. His feet made the entire ground vibrate, or maybe it was just her own psychological feelings. Avrona couldn't help but hug his naked calves and kiss his insteps. Lu Chang'an let out a long breath. Ever since he discovered that Tesla's eternal cabinet was Shangguan Dandan's coffin, Lu Chang'an knew that he couldn't resist with a human body. He had also been with that coffin for a long time, and he had already felt that it was extraordinary and contained the power of a civilization, which was by no means ordinary. Looking at Avrona at his feet, Lu Chang'an was a little indescribable. How did the former Rasputin turn into such a confused look? Lu Chang'an even thought of Zhu Huntang. I don't know where Mrs. Karnstein ran with Sunangzio and the little white snake. I guess they also felt that the matter here was resolved and they would be back soon. Lu Chang'an turned his head and saw that the penguin army was retreating, but a few penguins were staggering and running over with their short legs. Recharge Q coins. Lu Chang'an was stunned for a moment, looking at the penguin who asked him to recharge Q coins. Does it know what kind of existence he is? Can I become a member? Super members, think about it. Annual membership is more cost-effective. I won't charge. Lu Chang'an refused without hesitation. Where's the yellow diamond? Where's the green diamond? Where's the black diamond? Where's the purple diamond? Don't you have a diamond member of various colors? How come there are humans who don't recharge Q coins? A huge emperor penguin said incomprehensibly. The nature of human beings is to charge Q coins, a Dree penguin said next to him. How can you say you are a human being if you don't charge Q coins? Said the chinstrap penguin. If no one deposits Q coins, we will all become extinct, said the handbowed penguin, which was already on the verge of extinction. Lu Chang'an didn't want to charge Q coins, so he grabbed these penguins and threw them out. He watched them slide far away on the ice, then crawled and rolled away. Not long after, Mrs. Karnstein, Sunangziu and Little White Snake returned to the cliff together. They looked at Lu Chang'an with very complicated expressions. There was no doubt that they had seen the scene just now from a distance. They are all very special beings, but there is no doubt that their specialness is completely insignificant in front of him. They once thought they knew him well enough to know how special and powerful he was, but they never thought that he was far more special and powerful than they imagined. What should we do now? After a long silence, Sunangziu looked at Lu Chang'an and said. In fact, she has the closest relationship with him here. It is precisely because of this most intimate past, compared with her ignorance of him, that Sunangziu, feeling a little confused and unable to accept reality. She was a little confused, still had a lot of frustration from failure, and felt deeply powerless. Everything she did seemed to be wrong, the research she had been so crazy about seemed especially ridiculous. Is she trying to have offspring with such a mysterious creature? I want to go there and have a look. Lu Chang'an pointed to the glass house in the distance, then patted his arm, at least find some clothes to wear first. Sunangziu forced a smile. The book review area is holding an extra prize-winning guessing activity, and everyone is welcome to participate. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 691. After spending 2 days in the glass house in Antarctica, I returned to Juncha on the night of New Year's Eve. It started to snow in Juncha. Returning on a snowy night, the last high-speed train that stopped at Juncha left. Lu Chang'an walked out of the high-speed train station, where only the lights were on near the passage. He took a breath. The air in the city exuded something that made Lu Chang'an's mouth curl up slightly involuntarily. A feeling of back home. Lu Chang'an is very devoted to his current identity and likes it very much. Maybe he will feel differently in retrospect, but now he feels very good. Pieces of snowflakes fell in the dark gray sky far and near. There were not many passengers getting off at this stop, but it also made it difficult for Lu Chang'an to get a taxi nearby. He did not go to the taxi pickup point to queue. Instead, he walked through the underground passage in the station square and simply walked back. The solace of the shoes fell on the moderately deep snow, and the soft and crumbling sound made the steps feel rhythmic. Walking on the snow was a little more strenuous than usual. Occasionally, some places with thin ice were even slippery. There were very few pedestrians and vehicles. In such weather, the bustle of the city finally calmed down. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve, and it is very exciting to be able to come back today. Lu Chang'an thought about how many people in the entire country would be satisfied because they were able to come home today. Maybe there are many people who just stay somewhere silently and sigh softly, it's another new year. It was snowing, and Lu Chang'an's steps were slower than usual. Gradually, snow accumulated on his shoulders, back and hair. There was also a handful of snow hanging on his eyebrows, which was enough to show that it was indeed freezing cold on this snowy night. A taxi slowed down and approached Lu Chang'an. Seeing that he had no intention of taking a taxi, it speeded up and left, leaving the gradually blurred tail lights for Lu Chang'an to see, and then fell into the sinking channel ahead. Lu Chang'an casually grabbed a handful of snow from a tree on the roadside. The snow was getting heavier and heavier. There would be a thick layer tomorrow morning, much heavier than the snow he saw last time in Linen. It's a pity that there are no red plum blossoms tonight. Such a beautiful thing like being turned red on a snowy night is rare but hard to come by. Lu Chang'an squeezed the snow in his hand and turned it into thin ice slag, and flicked it out. Unexpectedly, he hit a small tree as thick as an arm. The trunk broke with a crack, and the heavy snow on the tree immediately fell down. When I landed, snow suddenly flew everywhere, and my eyes were filled with white mist. Lu Chang'an frowned. As a civilized citizen, of course he couldn't let go of such an accident, so he quickly spit on the broken tree trunk, then ran to the nearby construction site to find wooden sticks, and then raised the crown of the tree. Using wooden sticks and strips of cloth torn from clothes to fix the trunk. After confirming that the tree could survive and grow stronger, Lu Chang'an left with satisfaction. In a black car that was slowly leaving next to him, a woman who had just gotten off work took a picture of Lu Chang'an's behavior and quickly posted a message on WeChat. It was freezing cold and I saw a psycho taking off his clothes and breaking a tree that was crushed by snow. Bandaging. Just after posting on WeChat moments, the woman's car lights caught sight of Psycho, and she discovered that the Psycho had fair and clean skin, a neat and handsome face, and an outstanding figure. She couldn't help but wonder, could this be a man who is full of fun and artistic conception in his life? Handsome guy. Did something happen to you? The woman hesitated for a moment, lowered the car window and asked. There is a high chance of encountering bad things at night like this, but after all, she is a kind-hearted person. Faced with what may happen, who could not be kind-hearted in an affair of this level? I just came back from Antarctica and I feel that the weather here is too hot, Lu Chang'an explained to the enthusiastic citizens. The woman hesitated for a moment, then hurriedly accelerated the car and drove away. Although the other person was good-looking, he seemed to be really crazy. If he just wanted to rape her, forget it. But in movies, this kind of crazy person often has difficulty controlling himself, and he is still a child. Lives matter. Lu Chang'an waved goodbye to the car's tail lights. Although the other party still ran away, he was doing his best to care about strangers on such a night. When Lu Chang'an returned to the downstairs of his home in the community, he was the only one with the lights on in the whole building. Looking at the windows dimly illuminated by fine snowflakes, Lu Chang'an felt a little warm in his head. He was thinking about becoming a human being. What a success! It's great to have the same state of mind and pursuit as ordinary people. Lu Chang'an didn't bring a key, so he pushed the door out of habit, and actually pushed it open directly. Then he saw a TV in the living room, and Zhou Shuling was sitting at the electric heating table, cutting window grills. Why don't you close the door? Lu Chang'an asked. Usually Zhou Shuling likes to close the door for him, let alone when she stays here alone. When Zhou Shuling heard the voice, she was stunned for a moment and thought she was hallucinating again. She looked up and smiled immediately. I'm really back. Why don't you close the door? The Chinese New Year is coming soon, and thieves are also celebrating the New Year, especially rampant, Lu Chang'an asked, closing the door with his backhand. I just have a premonition that you will come home tonight. Zhou Shuling's eyes narrowed when she smiled. She had a very strong premonition today. She always felt that he would arrive tonight, so she wanted to sit here. Sit there, lest he return home to an empty, cold, and unpopular place, which would definitely feel bad. Your hunch was right. Lu Chang'an raised his hand and grabbed Zhou Shuling's head. Zhou Shuling was about to tease her that she was not a child like Zhou Dongdong. She felt the warmth of Lu Chang'an's fingers and rubbed her eyes. She looked at Lu Chang'an carefully and was surprised. She pulled Lu Chang'an into the bedroom and asked him to sit down. He walked to the bedside and quickly squatted down to help him take off his shoes and socks. He pinched the soles of his feet, which were also cold. He couldn't help but anxiously complained, "Why are you all wet and you are only wearing a shirt? Change your clothes quickly, I'll get hot water." Lu Chang'an was indeed wet all over. He had walked all the way and was covered in snow, which melted as soon as he entered the house. It had no effect on him, but it was not a comfortable feeling either. Lu Chang'an casually changed into a pair of pajamas and walked out. Zhou Shuling asked Lu Chang'an to sit down at the electric heating table, brought a basin of hot water and put it at his feet, and quickly put his feet in the hot water to soak. Then he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "The cold starts from the feet. Even if you are young now, if the cold has accumulated, you will suffer it in the future." Lu Chang'an laughed, but Zhou Shuling was watching him soaking his feet, as if the effectiveness of soaking would be reduced if she didn't watch him, or he wouldn't soak his feet. "Come, sit down." Lu Chang'an pointed to the seat next to him. Zhou Shuling pulled the hem of her thermal underwear and sat down. "What are you doing?" "Come here." Lu Chang'an waved. "What are you going to do?" Zhou Shuling said shyly. They were almost next to each other. She sat over and moved her buttocks again, sighing comfortably. The cold air on his body had chilled her from the busy work just now. It's still comfortable next to the electric heating table. Lu Chang'an raised his arms and hugged Zhou Shuling's shoulders. Her arms and shoulders were soft. It was obvious that her body was much better than at least half a year ago. Women still need a better life to nourish them. You, what are you going to do?" Zhou Shuling repeated hesitantly. She was not afraid of what Lu Chang'an would do to him, but she was just surprised. Normally they were like a family, and she felt that the intimacy with Lu Chang'an was just that. This kind of spiritual feeling is not as free and casual as the physical contact with real family members. "It's nothing, I just think it's good to have someone here doing messy and useless things when I get back home." Lu Chang'an smiled and let go of Zhou Shuling's shoulder. "What do you mean by messy and useless things?" Zhou Shuling pushed Lu Chang'an angrily, and quickly expressed her merit for herself. "Aren't the window grills I cut beautiful? I put several of them on the windows. I can't even give you a foot bath. You think you are very capable now, right? Let me tell you, if you don't force the cold out." Okay, I know you are capable and considerate." Lu Chang'an patted the back of Zhou Shuling's hand. "Go to bed early, we have to buy New Year's goods tomorrow. You are busy on New Year's Eve. Are you ready to braised pork? Are the egg dumplings ready? Have you bought the fish? Have you bought the fried tofu?" Zhou Shuling shook her head. She only cut the window grills today because Zhou Dongdong and Shang Guandandan were causing trouble, so Zhou Shuling couldn't immediately express her credit for doing many useful things. "I'm really immortal." Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 692. Seeing Zhou Shuling twisting her waist and going upstairs in a good mood, Lu Chang'an also smiled. The temperament of this traditional little woman who is a good match for the family is very endearing. In fact, in a sense, it is a manifestation of a firm and powerful heart. No matter what other women in this world pursue or like, how much their spiritual world has improved, how much their independent consciousness has awakened, Zhou Shuling has not been disturbed in the slightest. Lu Chang'an looked at the window grills left by Zhou Shuling, smiled, and cut a little by himself before going to bed. In the morning, Lu Chang'an woke up because someone was playing with his head. Zhou Dongdong seemed to be the only one who could do this, so Lu Chang'an did not open his eyes. He only felt Zhou Dongdong holding his head in one hand, and then leaning over, holding his head in his hand. He sucked something and made a slurping sound. Then he put the straw into Lu Chang'an's mouth and squeezed it. Lu Chang'an felt a tube of milk ejaculate into his mouth. He sat up quickly. It was not wise to pretend to be asleep in front of Zhou Dongdong. The behavior of If Zhou Dongdong is not sitting at the dining table or eating seriously on a small stool, she will often take a bite by herself and then feed it to a companion like Lu Xin or Lu Chang'an. "Brother Chang'an, you woke up by yourself," Zhou Dongdong said happily. When he woke up this morning and was caught by the quilt and couldn't move, only his eyeballs could move, his mother said that Brother Chang'an was back, and Zhou Dongdong hurriedly took it. "I got some milk and came down to see Brother Chang'an, whom I haven't seen for a long time. Did I wake up by myself? Lu Chang'an got up and got dressed. Today Zhou Dongdong wore a red cotton jacket and a woolen hat. It was probably Zhou Shuling's own handiwork. There were long ear protection hanging on both sides of the hat, and there were attached to it are two small plastic toy airplanes. Today we are going to buy New Year's goods. Mom said the New Year's goods are delicious. Zhou Dongdong has been looking forward to this for a long time, because his mother said that he would wait for brother Chang'an to go shopping together, so Zhou Dongdong is also waiting for brother Chang'an to come back. Well, have you ever been downstairs? No, Zhou Dongdong said, biting the straw. After getting up, he got dressed and rushed over. Wait for me. Lu Chang'an put on his clothes, rinsed his mouth, picked up Zhou Dongdong, and walked downstairs. It's snowing. The milk carton in Zhou Dongdong's hand fell to the ground, and he stared at the silver-white world in shock. Ouch! Zhou Dongdong shouted and rushed into the snow. He opened his hands and feet and threw himself on the thick snow to roll. Oops! Zhou Dongdong's chin hit the brick hidden in the snow. Lu Chang'an helped her up and was about to apply some saliva on her, but Zhou Dongdong kicked his feet and shook his hands wildly, and rushed towards the snow again, as if he saw someone he often fights and bites, but was caught. It's like a dog whose owner is holding on tightly with a leash. Lu Chang'an had no choice but to let her go and let her rush into the snow to have fun. This shouldn't be Zhou Dongdong's first time seeing snow, but the child's short life experience of just a few years always makes the memory blurry quickly. It's full of novelty and joy when you experience it again. Lu Xin also rushed down from upstairs. Zhou Shuling felt that the weather was too cold, so she took Lu Xin to stay at home upstairs. She did not let Lu Xin continue to live in the small wooden house under the stairs. Lu Xin was always with Zhou Shuling. Hey, it became extremely smooth and slippery. It circled around Lu Chang'an for a few times, and then it couldn't wait to roll and twist on the snow with Zhou Dongdong. Lu Chang'an couldn't help but frowned. He just thought that Zhou Dongdong would be very happy to see the snow, but he didn't expect that it would be exactly like a wild boar seeing a mud puddle. He was not a human being. Don't most children try to step on footprints, run in the snow, and then pick up a bit of snow and squeeze a ball? At this time, the small door downstairs opened a little, and Shang Guandandan revealed one eye, looking at the ice and snow on the ground, and then looked up at Lu Chang'an, who was standing next to him, and at the children and dogs rolling around under the tree. Shang Guandandan then opened the door and hesitated for a moment, thinking of a poem about the snow scene, the wanderer returning home, and the loving mother's thoughts corresponding to the scene, but, maybe it was because I hadn't drank sparkling water today, so my thoughts were a little messy for a while. Can't remember, forget it. Morning. Lu Chang'an looked at Shang Guandandan, who was walking out against the wall, being careful not to step on the white snow in front of the door. When did you come back? Shang Guandandan stood against the wall and glanced at Zhou Dongdong and Lu Xin again, a little worried that they would roll over and destroy the snow in front of Shang Guandandan's door. Last night. Then you didn't knock on my door last night, Shang Guandandan said dissatisfiedly. Whenever other people's children come home, they will tell their mother first. Then why don't you wait at my house? Zhou Shuling will be waiting for me when I go home, Lu Chang'an retorted. Dongdong, Mom is so good, Shang Guandandan praised with great satisfaction. As for Lu Chang'an's other questions, his ears were a little cold due to the snow, so he didn't hear them. Lu Chang'an shook his head. Shang Guandandan looked at the snow and the snow-covered sycamore trees, but decided to recite a poem. The scenery of the north is covered with ice for thousands of miles, and snow is drifting for thousands of miles. Looking inside and outside the Great Wall, there is nothing but vastness, and the rivers up and down suddenly lose their torrents. The mountains are dancing with silver. Snake, originally a wax figure, wants to compete with God. On a sunny day, it is especially enchanting to see the red makeup and plain clothes. The country is so beautiful that it attracts countless heroes to bend their waists. I cherish the Qin Emperor and the Han Dynasty. The Qin Emperor and the Han Dynasty are very powerful. The ancestors of the Tang Dynasty and the Song Dynasty were a little less charming. Genghis Khan, the genius of the generation, only knew how to bend a bow and shoot the giant eagle. They are all gone. Let's count the romantic figures, but we still have to look at the present. Emperor Qin and Han Wu are very powerful. Lu Chang'an could still clearly hear her random sentence. Yes, the Han Wu here refers to Emperor Shizong Xiao of the Han Dynasty. Of course he is powerful, the most powerful, Shang Guandandan said proudly. Other people in this poem are only comparable to Emperor Qin. Okay, Lu Chang'an didn't argue with her. He didn't say that Emperor Qin and Han Wu were not powerful, he just thought that her level of blindly changing poems was too low. No one else is allowed to step on the snow in front of my door. Shang Guandandan went back and took the pliers for holding briquettes, preparing to draw an area. At this time, Zhou Dongdong, who was already like a snowball, rushed over, grabbed 2 balls of snow and threw them on Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan. Then he fell down where Shang Guandandan was about to draw the range, and flexibly hit him. He got up and ran again. Is Dongdong still cute? Lu Chang'an said, looking at Shang Guandandan. She stood there blankly watching the wild boar rolling across the snow. Usually when Zhou Dongdong does something that makes Lu Chang'an unspeakable, Shang Guandandan likes to giggle and say Dongdong is so cute. Shang Guandandan silently put away the briquette tongs, then moved out the small stove, kettle, and the long stool she liked to sit on when boiling water, put some charcoal into the stove to light the fire, and looked at it. After checking the fire, I dipped a large piece of charcoal that I felt was redundant, dipped it in some snow, extinguished the sparks, and put it into a snakeskin bag. Then I placed the small kettle filled with water on the stove, and then sat down holding the thermos kettle. Na looked at the color of snow in front of him and ignored Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an laughed, Dan Dan is so cute. Shang Guandandan gave him a roll of his eyes. Zhou Shuling, who was upstairs, poked her head out and said she was ready to have breakfast. Then she saw Zhou Dongdong, who had turned into a snowball, with his hood, hair, ears, shoebacks, and trouser pockets full of snow, running around. She suddenly ran away in anger. She came down to catch up with Zhou Dongdong, but she was wearing fur slippers and couldn't rush into the snow. Looking at Lu Chang'an next to him, he looked like he was expecting her to hit Zhou Dongdong. She was so angry that she twisted Lu Chang'an's waist. Dongdong flying like a wild boar has something to do with Lu Chang'an. Please give me some recommendation votes and monthly passes, anything. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 693. Zhou Shuling's fur slippers did not get wet and were said to be made of wool, which she cherished. Moreover, she had not put on socks yet, and she was a little afraid that the inside of the slippers would get wet if she stepped on the snow a few times. So she pushed Lu Chang'an and signaled Lu Chang'an to go and capture Zhou Dongdong. Lu Chang'an didn't move, so Zhou Shuling used a little more strength and had to push him into the snow. But she didn't have that much strength. Seeing Lu Chang'an motionless, Zhou Shuling turned around and put her feet on the ground, trying to push Lu Chang'an out using her recently put on weight position. Listening to her panting and exerting herself behind him, and feeling that her body had become plump recently and her flesh had grown to some extent, Lu Chang'an's thoughts were diverted, and she was actually successfully pushed to the snow. She almost fell down, but she was still a little happy, but as soon as her eyes fell on Zhou Dongdong, she stamped her feet angrily. Zhou Dongdong was covered in snow, like a little snowman who had been piled under the sycamore tree. He suddenly grew legs, stood up from the snow, and ran around. You two won't have breakfast later, Zhou Shuling grabbed a handful of snow on the ground and threw it on Lu Chang'an's back. Go and get her back. Let's have a snowball fight. Seeing his mother throwing snowballs at brother Chang'an, Zhou Dongdong rushed over, holding a big snowball in his hand, and threw it at Zhou Shuling. Zhou Shuling looked at Zhou Dongdong, who turned around and ran away, and the beautiful clothes she had put on specially to go shopping for New Year's goods today. They were covered with snow mixed with leaves and dead branches. She immediately ran upstairs angrily and put them on. He put on a leather jacket, put on his rain boots and came over to catch up with Zhou Dongdong. Zhou Dongdong was shocked when he looked at his mother, who was fully armed. Such a mother could not resist at all, so she quickly howled and ran away. Lu Chang'an just liked to see this kind of scene and couldn't help but laugh. At this time, Zhou Shuling turned around and saw Lu Chang'an laughing there, grabbed a snowball and hit him on the head. Make you laugh. Seeing the snowflakes blooming on Lu Chang'an's face, Zhou Shuling burst into laughter. Giggle. The laughter, like a hen showing off after laying eggs, started again. Lu Chang'an glanced at Shang Guandandan, who was gloating at the side, grabbed 2 handfuls of snow on the ground and threw it towards Zhou Shuling and Shang Guandandan. Shangguan's laughter suddenly stopped. He looked at his thermos angrily and then at Lu Chang'an. He sat there motionless and kicked his 2 little feet while Zhou Shuling was kneeling on the ground holding snow in her hands. In counterattack, his long hair rolled up a snowball as big as a millstone on the ground and threw it towards Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an stared at her tentacle-like hair and dodged it nimbly. Unexpectedly, the snowball exploded next to his head and immediately hit him covered in snow. Shang Guandandan took a look, and then his expression changed from expressionless to giggling. Look at my big snowball. Zhou Shuling also successfully picked up a big snowball and lifted it up with difficulty. However, her foot slipped and the snowball successfully hit Lu Chang'an, but she also fell to the ground. Lu Chang'an put his arm around her shoulders and held her slender waist with one hand. This woman's flesh had not grown to where it shouldn't have. Seeing Lu Chang'an's smiling but not smiling face, Zhou Shuling quickly grabbed his shoulders and stood up straight, blushing slightly. It's all you, I won't make trouble with you anymore, I'm going to make breakfast. After a long commotion in the morning, Lu Chang'an finally took Zhou Dongdong back. She was sweating a lot, the snow on her clothes had melted a lot, and she was all wet. Zhou Shuling was making breakfast, so she gave Zhou Dongdong the task of changing clothes. Passed it to Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an carried Zhou Dongdong to the electric heating table and took off his clothes. He touched his back and saw that it was covered with sweat. Before he could wipe away the sweat with the towel, Zhou Dongdong quickly got under the electric heating table and hid. It was warm inside. Lu Chang'an went upstairs to get the clothes he wanted to change, but Zhou Dongdong was down there and refused to come out. It's just that the child couldn't wear winter clothes by herself. Lu Chang'an didn't just throw the clothes under the electric heating table and let her change by herself. He took a stick and poked her under the electric heating table and finally drove her out and caught her. Wear clothes. After breakfast, Lu Chang'an and Zhou Shuling went to the vegetable market to buy fish. Fish is essential for the New Year's Eve dinner, in order to have more than enough every year. Actually, it's also very auspicious for you to save $1 in Yue Bao, Lu Chang'an said to Zhou Shuling. Can it be the same? Zhou Shuling didn't think so. If there is any difference, it is all for good luck. Fish is a surplus, and Yue Bao is also a surplus. It's just different, Zhou Shuling insisted, even though there was no reason. Why do you have to think of a reason for many things, or think about why? Just like Zhou Shuling feels that her current life is very happy, so she won't think about unnecessary things. At this time, a small car skidded, causing a burst of snowflakes to fall. Zhou Shuling was startled and quickly took Lu Chang'an's arm and hid aside. It's several meters apart. I think I'm scaring you, Lu Chang'an laughed. Sometimes he often wondered whether Zhou Shuling was as stupid as Zhou Dongdong when she was a child, but she was not as lucky as Zhou Dongdong. Zhou Dongdong met the gentle and kind brother Chang'an at a very young age, who was like a god descending to shine on all living beings. Zhou Shuling did not have such a blessing when she was a child, and no one took care of and preserved her honest innocence and simplicity. In fact, it doesn't mean that Zhou Shuling is no longer naive and simple. It's just that she has experienced a lot of ups and downs in the world, but the fundamental things in her temperament have not been wiped out, and now she is gradually recovering. What if it keeps sliding over, knocks away the small tree again, and runs onto the sidewalk, Zhou Shuling said with a sigh of relief. If she could drive, there would be no one on the street and the weather would be nice. They dared to drive out slowly only when it was snowing. These people dared to drive even when it was snowing. They were so audacious. Unless it is coming at you and wants to hit you, the probability of this happening is zero. Lu Chang'an also thought about the car, go buy a car and take the two children out to eat, drink and have fun. It's also more convenient. The two children, of course, refer to Zhou Dongdong and Shang Guandandan. Among them, Shang Guandandan is in the state of Schrödinger's cat in Lu Chang'an's case. Whether she is a little old lady or a child, it all depends on what Lu Chang'an wants to call her. Zhou Shuling was a little moved, but after thinking about it, she shook her head. It's a waste of money. If everyone drives a car, then what are the subways and buses for? There are always people who take the subways and buses. Lu Chang'an glanced sideways at this fragrant woman, and couldn't help but smile and shake his head. This reason is worthy of Zhou Dongdong's mother. Zhou Dongdong once said that if all the children are smart, they must go. If you come first in the exam, who will be the last? Does she really look like me? Zhou Shuling denied unwillingly. I'm much smarter than her. My grades in elementary school should have been better than hers. Then let me give you a question to test you. It is known that except for the natural numbers of type 9n plus or minus 4, all natural numbers within 100 can be written as the sum of cubes of three integers. If you are 24, 30, 33, 42, 52, 74, choose one of these numbers and write it as the sum of cubes of three integers. Lu Chang'an asked a question casually. He must have been exposed to the concept of cubes in elementary school. Since she is very smart, it must not be difficult for her. Zhou Shuling frowned. She had already realized that smart women like her were often not liked by men, so marriages and blind dates all failed. However, Zhou Shuling hoped to behave smarter in front of Lu Chang'an, because she didn't want to acting silly and cute in front of him. But I am still not as smart as Lu Chang'an, so this question sounds difficult, and it is normal for me to not understand what he is talking about at all. How do I know? Zhou Shuling shook her head. Just because I can't do this question doesn't mean I'm not smart. Just ask Zhou Dongdong. I guarantee she won't know it either. Are you sorry? As a mother, Lu Chang'an also shook his head. As long as I'm smarter than her, I can be her mother. Do I have to be the smartest person in the world to be her mother? Zhou Shuling said disapprovingly. Lu Chang'an then told her how to decompose 24, 30, 33, 42, 52, 74 into three integers and the cubes and the answers, all the way to the vegetable market. He knew she didn't understand, but it was interesting to see her confused face and nodding her head from time to time to cooperate with Lu Chang'an's explanation. When they arrived at the vegetable market, Lu Chang'an and Zhou Shuling approached the fish stall and found that the various fish kept in the fish tank seemed to be particularly excited today. They also thought about sacrificing themselves to celebrate the new year. They rushed to jump and splash in the fish tanks, crowded together and pressed against the glass. One of the big grass carps jumped high out of the fish tank and landed next to Lu Chang'an. It twisted its body hard, relying on the flapping of its tail fin, and finally moved to Lu Chang'an's feet. That's it for New Year's Eve dinner, Lu Chang'an said with great emotion. That's it, Zhou Shuling also said, reaching out to take out her mobile phone to pay, and then she realized that she was holding Lu Chang'an's arm. It seems, it seems that when the car started blowing snow and I was trying to avoid it, I held his arm, and actually held it all the way. Really, he didn't even say anything. Zhou Shuling glared at Lu Chang'an shyly and raised her hand again, gently placing a few fingers on his arm. The new book is on the shelves, you can read it or not as you like, but it would be even better if you could help me make an initial subscription. I can't repay you, but I would like to give you a continuous chapter after chapter of Changsheng, which is not considered continuous. Well, that's the continuation of the chapter intermittently. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 694. After bringing the big grass carp home, Zhou Shuling put on gloves and an apron, killed the fish neatly, salted it, and then set off to buy New Year's goods with everyone. Zhou Dongdong changed into a black down jacket and wore a hood that covered his head, leaving only his small face exposed. There were 2 cat ears standing up on it. She couldn't wait any longer. She grabbed the door handle and made several gestures of rushing out. Shang Guandandan was jumping up and down next to her. When Lu Chang'an and Zhou Shuling were about to set off, Shang Guandandan held Zhou Dongdong's hand first. Went downstairs. If you soil your clothes again today, you won't have new clothes to wear tomorrow, Zhou Shuling shouted from behind and warned Zhou Dongdong. If you don't have new clothes to wear, then you don't have any. You even learned to talk back. If it weren't for having to take the stairs, Zhou Shuling would have beaten someone. You have to tell her that there won't be anything delicious tomorrow. Lu Chang'an found that Zhou Shuling was still not good at handling Zhou Dongdong after being a mother for so long. If you soil your clothes today, there won't be anything delicious for you to eat tomorrow, Zhou Shuling shouted quickly when she saw Zhou Dongdong running on the snow and jumping around, not knowing what stupid thing he was going to do. Zhou Dongdong stood there for a moment and then said immediately, I know. My hands are cold. Shang Guandandan took off a small red glove, put the palm of his hand into Lu Chang'an's hand and let him hold it. Shang Guandandan's gloves were knitted by Zhou Shuling. The 2 red gloves were connected together with red wool and hung around his neck. Zhou Dongdong also had such a pair, but Zhou Dongdong's palms were always warm, so he had taken them off long ago. Dongdong mom. Shang Guandandan waved to Zhou Shuling, indicating that Zhou Shuling would give her her palm as well. Holding hands with his 2 juniors, one on the left and the other on the right, Shang Guandandan looked contentedly at Zhou Dongdong, who was running and jumping in front, stepping on snowdrifts, and Lu Xin, who was shaking his head. Last time I walked to Zhezhou alone, but I didn't know whether to go to Zhongshen Temple or the big statue, so I walked back again, Shang Guandandan said with some pride. Amazing, you dare to go so far alone, you are worthy of being the Queen Mother, Lu Chang'an complimented sincerely. The footprints left by Shang Guandandan in the city are as far as the top of Lushan Mountain on the other side, but they were basically carried by Lu Chang'an on his back, and then Qin Yan'an drove him back. She walked the road with her own feet, and Lu Chang'an suspected that she had not. Sometimes the mileage comes down to a day of wandering. It was the same when I was a kid, Zhou Shuling also agreed heartily. The first time I went to Zhezhou, I was standing under the bridge. I didn't know whether to look to the left or the right, so I went back, but there were no big statues at that time. You are really amazing. Lu Chang'an did not try to understand them. Perhaps the similarity is why Shang Guandandan likes Zhou Shuling in particular. Let's buy parent-child clothes today, Shang Guandandan said to Zhou Shuling. Okay, Zhou Shuling nodded happily, although she felt that as a mother, it wouldn't be like having a daughter as old as Shang Guandandan. It's better to pretend to be a sister, but as long as Shang Guandandan is happy, pretend to be a parent-child. Bar. You guys wear yours, Zhou Dongdong and I wear, well, our outfits are called, the Witty and Brave Dragon and Stupid Kid outfits. Lu Chang'an originally wanted to call it the Witty and Brave outfit, but after a quick look, he thought Zhou Dongdong, who is shaking the tree, still feels that Witty and Brave is not suitable for Zhou Dongdong. Zhou Dongdong, Zhou Shuling discovered it in time and yelled quickly. Zhou Dongdong then gave up trying to shake the snow off the tree. He looked up and a lump of snow fell and hit his face. He opened his mouth and spat out the snow particles in his mouth. Why is snow not as delicious as ice cream? Today's New Year's goods mainly include all kinds of candies and a wide variety of fruits. Zhou Shuling and Shang Guandandan bought parent-child outfits, and Lu Chang'an and Zhou Dongdong bought witty and brave dragons and silly children's outfits. Except for Zhou Dongdong, Shang Guandandan and Zhou Shuling had no objection to the name of the suit given by Lu Chang'an. It's a set of the witty and brave brother Chang'an and the witty and brave child Zhou Dongdong muttered while peeling off the chocolate foil packaging. Think about your final exam. See if you are smart and brave, Zhou Shuling said. Like any child, if she fails the final exam, she will be talked about throughout the holiday. Then I'm not smart and brave, are you smart and brave? Zhou Dongdong said while eating chocolate. Zhou Dongdong had long forgotten about the final exam. Winter vacation is a time that has nothing to do with studying. Of course I am, Zhou Shuling said with certainty. Then why would a smart and brave mother give birth to a stupid child? Zhou Dongdong objected loudly. Then why don't you make me smarter and braver? Zhou Shuling was speechless for a moment. This little butt, seeing that she was 1 year older, her academic performance was not good, but her ability to talk back was getting better. If you like smart and brave children, why don't you have a child with the smart and brave brother Chang'an? If both of them are smart and brave, will they give birth to a stupid child? Zhou Dongdong raised his hand and touched Zhou Shuling's belly. Zhou Shuling's cheeks heated up and she took a peek at Lu Chang'an. He was actually smiling, as if what Zhou Dongdong said had nothing to do with him. I won't give you food at noon. Zhou Shuling was embarrassed to lecture Zhou Dongdong in such a big way about this topic, so she had to pass it off gently. Dongdong is so cute, Shang Guandandan chuckled. Lu Chang'an lightly tapped Shang Guandandan on the head. The little old lady liked to gloat over his misfortunes. Whenever she saw Zhou Dongdong's childish words and wuji made adults helpless, she was very happy by her side. Back home, Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong were still sitting next to the electric heating table. Zhou Shuling went to put the things in order, putting the things in the refrigerator, putting the things upstairs in the upstairs, and putting the things downstairs in the downstairs. I went to wash a large basin of fruit and put it on the electric heating table. There is no way. People here are very good at eating. The fruit plates in other people's homes that are mainly beautiful and exquisite are not suitable. Zhou Shuling saw Shang Guandandan picking up a pair of window grills and looking at them. She took a closer look. The level of craftsmanship, the delicate and flawless patterns and textures were on par with the works of traditional craft masters introduced on TV. Zhou Shuling was shocked. He opened his mouth and looked at Lu Chang'an blankly. Did you cut it? This couldn't have been done by Shang Guandandan. Shang Guandandan did nothing but boil water. Zhou Shuling had already discovered this. Yes, when I came back last night, I saw that you had a lot of paper cuts left here, so I just cut some. Lu Chang'an looked at her inexplicably. Why are you looking at me so wronged? I cut a window grill and you still bully you. Already. Zhou Shuling pouted and wiped her nose. Of course she felt wronged. She had been cutting window grills for a long time, and she had cut many, many more. When he came back, the ones he cut were much prettier than hers. In comparison, her window grills were just like Zhou Dongdong's handicraft class homework is the same, so how can she be embarrassed to put up those window grills? Seeing her expression, Lu Chang'an probably understood, and couldn't help but laugh. It's okay, I've been cutting window grills for many years, how can you compare with me? Go and chop the meat and prepare to make egg dumplings. Stupid mother, Zhou Dongdong chuckled. When Zhou Shuling came to her senses, she gave Zhou Dongdong a slap and stared at this stupid kid. She is no better than Lu Chang'an and can't deal with you. After eating at noon, Lu Chang'an remembered that there were still fireworks and firecrackers that he had not bought. He was going to buy some powerful varieties. Zhou Dongdong wanted to follow, but she offended Zhou Shuling too many times today and was suppressed by Zhou Shuling on the electric heating table. Doing winter vacation homework next to me. Shang Guandandan volunteered to help Zhou Dongdong with his homework. She thought she already had such ability. As the Spring Festival is approaching, Junxia does not completely prohibit the setting off of fireworks and firecrackers as people judge by common sense. After all, in Zhezhou, in the center of the city, every Saturday, Sunday, and major holidays, the officials will set off endless fireworks regardless of anything, and the crackling and popping fireworks are a fireworks banquet that blooms in the sky across the city. Only state agencies and institutions, transportation hubs, and crowded places are prohibited. Most of them are only partially restricted areas. In these partially restricted areas, fireworks can often be set off from the 24th of the 12th lunar month until the 15th of the 1st lunar month. The powerful varieties that Lu Chang'an decided to buy were not available in the shops in the bustling areas of the city center. They were only sold in the relatively large fireworks and firecracker shops in the traditional Superstition Street, which is the street where funeral supplies are usually sold. The demand for activities such as grave dance can also be contacted in this area. In many funeral activities, if the deceased is over 80 years old, it is often treated as a happy event. What kind of female team is invited to perform? All kinds of programs are normal. Lu Chang'an planned to buy a cannon that was at least as thick as his arm, and planned to perform a spiral to the sky show for Zhou Dongdong in the evening. In fact, it was very simple. He held the big cannon and asked Zhou Dongdong to light the fuse. Then he kicked off the cannon, as if he was being spiraled into the sky by the cannon. After wandering around for a long time, he didn't find the big cannon that met his needs, but Big Bear did see 4. The style and writing of the sequel are no different from the main text. There is no exaggeration, but it will only increase the role of some characters.